Oh my God. You're so ridiculous. Paul W., have you ever been on a Zoom before?
I have.
What? Aren't you a showrunner?
I am. But we don't usually have echo issues.
Just to fill our listeners in, Paul W. went from his closet or some sort of bunker.
I was in a bunker,
and
yeah.
it was all wood, so there was an echo. And then we told him he had to, maybe if he could get into bed or something. He didn't want to do that. We offered you to get into bed, and instead you went around the corner into some. Is this a birthing room that you're in now?
This is a bedroom.
Okay.
There is a bed, but here's the thing: it's a laptop, so I'd have to hold the laptop. I'm like,
oh no!
What am I
We just
doing?
want
What
you
am
to
I
be
doing?
as comfortable as possible because
This is great.
you're stressing me out.
Oh no! Don't get stressed.
Paul, congratulations on season 3 of the very funny, very successful Hacks on HBO Max. Well, we call it Max now, right?
Yeah, I suppose so.
We do.
Yeah.
Legally, we must. Yeah.
Yes, we must. How has this experience been? Because, okay, so to fill our listeners in, Paul writes with his wife, Lucia.
Yep, Lucia.
And you guys came up with this, right?
We did. We came up with it with our very best friend, Jen Statsky, who's our third showrunner.
Okay, right. I have a very good friend from high school named Jen Satsky.
No way.
Yeah. So.
And did you go to high school in New Jersey?
I did, Livingston High School. So tell Jen.
I'm from New Jersey. My parents are from Randolph and Dover.
Yeah.
First of all, I should have started with huge fan. But also, I've always thought you could be in my family. I just get the vibe. You'd fit right in.
Yeah, I'm a very Jersey girl at heart. That's really where the edges come. Yeah, so are you, right?
I'm a Jersey girl too. Yeah.
Would you compare yourself to Snooki at all?
No, I'm not a Snooki. I'm more a Martha Stewart, I gotta say.
Right.
You know, if I'm gonna pick a Jersey girl that I feel is my spirit
yeah,
animal,
I do too, because she's got the right amount of bitch. Well, she's got an extra amount of bitch, which I respect.
I do too. I got heavy on the bitch and light on the duck face.
She's light on the pleasantries.
Yeah.
She doesn't care. She doesn't have time. Every time I see her, she's like, "Who are you with, Chelsea? Who's your plus one?" That's all she cares about. And I'm like, yeah, I like that she cuts to the chase. Like, I don't want to say how it's so hot today either to anyone, you know? I don't
Yeah.
It's embarrassing. No. Okay.
No.
So tell us, because I know that you said you were quoted as saying that women are funnier than men.
Well, I'll stand by that. I do stand by that.
That's a good thing for men to start saying, just start practicing that.
Agree.
And is that why you wanted to do a show centered around a female comedian?
Yes. We were talking about how, the first live stand-up show, like real stand-up show I ever saw was Paula Poundstone in Morristown, New Jersey. And there were just like so many stand-ups that we were talking about that never got the same due that a ton of their male counterparts did. And we were just like, it's interesting, especially, because I met my wife and Jen in New York at the UCB, and we were like, part of that alt comedy scene, which also.
Are you guys a throuple?
We're not a throuple.
Sexually?
We do not. The three of us don't have sex.
Okay, just checking.
No.
I'm just clarifying, but that's good to know. So is Jen? Does she have a partner / lover?
She does. She has a husband, actually.
Okay, because that's very relevant to this conversation.
She does have a husband. He would probably be fine if we, became sexual, but we're not.
Okay, well,
the truth is we're not.
Don't count your chickens before they hatch. You never know what's down the pike.
That's exactly right.
I don't think I used that expression the right way, but I like the way I used it.
I did too. So not a throuple. But yeah, we just were like in this alt comedy scene also where there was a little bit of like, what's cool comedy? What's not cool comedy? And we were interested in exploring what it was like for like a younger comedian who maybe thought someone like Deborah Vance was a hack, not a cool comedy person, what it would be like for her to understand like all of the indignities that person suffered to like pave the way for other young comedians like her. So when we thought of it, we wrote an email to each other that was just like the log line of the show, and we could not stop thinking about it. Anytime we hung out, we talked about it.
I mean, it is such a great idea for a show to look at something that way. I would have thought in the opposite direction, like to prove this tough bad guy was like really did have a heart. But that's also part of the story too, with Jean Smart's
100%.
character, right?
Yeah,
her
she's
melting.
Like a very callous person. Yeah,
it's like a love affair between Hannah and Jean Smart.
It is a love affair, and we actually talk about it that way. We talk about the thaw all the time. Like thawing. Yeah. Yeah.
So you never did stand up when you were at UCB.
I did do stand up. I did mostly sketch and improv, but I did do stand up. And actually it was because I did stand up and I found it A, lonely, and B, like what I was doing was like a lot of like character. I would often be like, hey, I have some tech, and people at clubs would be like, what? And now I feel like there's a lot of tech in stand-up. Like you go to a show and it's like PowerPoints and tons of stuff, but I don't know. It didn't feel like the right place.
I don't know what you're fucking talking about. I have never seen a PowerPoint presentation at a stand-up show. I mean, I understand the differentiation between alternative and stand-up because Hannah's alternative. I would describe Hannah's comedy as alternative, which I just did in an article in the Wall Street Journal or something like that for her. Because
cool.
Because she is alternative. Like she has tech.
Yes, she does have tech. That's right. She does have, that's a great, yes. She's a perfect example of it.
Paul W., do you think Hannah's character is written after you, is like loosely based on you?
No, she's the closest to Jen. And the reason, I mean, there is parts of myself and Lucia and Jen in the character, and also parts of us in Deborah as well. Again, I'm a Martha Stewart. And I feel like the biggest similarity is that Jen, early when Twitter was like just popping off, she became very successful on Twitter. I don't know. Can you be successful? A lot of people followed her, and she got hired essentially. I mean, she had a great packet, I'm sure, but she was hired to write for Jimmy Fallon. And I think part of her discovery was because she was so well liked. Her comedy, her jokes were so good on Twitter. So that part of like the origin story of the character is borrowed from Jen's life, but there's a little bit of all of us in it.
Yeah. I mean, it's nice to have a team of 3 when you're doing anything creative because that gives you 2 heads to bounce ideas off of. So you can really like check the box of you know, because sometimes when you're working with yourself, you always have to bounce it off of someone else before you can put it live or write it down because I do. Actually, that's not true. I don't, but I do sometimes. I do. If I'm like on the fence about something, I, bounce it off a couple of people to get the reaction. And all I usually need is one confirmation. I'm like, I was right. That's funny.
Yeah.
You say it out loud to see if there's a reaction. And if there's not, you walk away, with your head between your legs.
Right. Or like me, because I've continued to do stand up to a certain degree, not enough to be maybe considered one, but I will keep doing a bit that doesn't work if I feel like it works for
you
truly years. I just keep doing it. I'm like, I think
that's funny. If I do something twice and 2 times it doesn't work, I don't do it again.
That's probably the way to do it.
No, I don't think there are any rules to anything. There really aren't. The goal, I think, for every creative, and you tell me if you disagree in any way, is to be confident in what they're creating, to have confidence in your creative ability. And when you're confident in what you're creating, like that, you can smell that. And when you're not, you can smell it. So if you're on stage doing something that doesn't work and you're confident about it, it will still work.
Right. Yeah, I think that's true. I don't lose an audience because I think it's funny. It does tickle me. And I do think that's something that
Please don't use that expression on this podcast that it tickles you. No.
All right.
No, not today.
It's masochistic. It's like,
no.
Okay.
It's a personal request.
Oh, good to know.
Mm-hmm.
You don't like to be tickled.
No, I don't. I don't like that. I don't like the word tickle. I find it very molesty.
Oh, 100%.
Like, come get a tickle. It's like, no, thank you. I'm not coming to get a tickle. Or tickle your fancy is another expression that I could do without, but I use it all the time in spite of it because it's so stupid. This might tickle your fancy, but
it's evocative.
Right.
Yeah,
it's very evocative.
But no, I think you're right. You have to be confident and you have to enjoy it yourself. That's one of the things that having 3 of us, it is good because we're so confident, because if we can make one of the other 3 laugh. My favorite audience are the 2 of them. And so we're constantly trying to make each other laugh, but it's also great because we have a tiebreaker. So that's also, there's a really good part of the 3 in creative collaboration because of that too.
So you guys won a bunch of Emmys. You went on your honeymoon, is this correct? And then you flew back straight to the Emmys?
Yeah, well, we weirdly, because of when the Emmys were happening, we did our honeymoon before our wedding. So we got married. I mean, the true story is this. I
don't know if I could get it up to do that. Like, do it in reverse. I might.
Oh.
Or maybe I would do the honeymoon and then leave before the marriage.
It was great to do it in reverse because I'm like, no. Well, we actually found out like 11 days before our honeymoon that Lucia was 2 months pregnant, which we did not plan.
And the baby was yours?
And the baby was mine, as far as I know.
Okay, well, obviously that's something to look into.
Mm-hmm. So we went on our honeymoon, we got married, and then we came back, and like 4 days later were the Emmys. So it was a really crazy month. And
then you won Emmys. How many Emmys did you win that night?
We did. I only won 1.
Oh.
Lucia won 2 that night. Jean won 1. I mean, there were a few Emmys for the show, but I personally took home 1.
Let's talk about Jean Smart. Tell me about your experience with, because Jean Smart lost her husband at the beginning of this series. I remember Hannah was telling me that, and then she had this huge resurgence at the same time, which I find
Yeah.
those things kind of coincide in people's lives all the time, right? There can be a
Yeah.
big loss, and then there can be like a major shift in a different area. So tell us about choosing Jean Smart for the role. Like, how did you decide?
Well, we wrote the part without anybody in mind, and we had written the script, and we made a list of people that we thought would be good for it. And she was honestly at the top of the list because we wanted someone who could do like there are heartfelt moments in the show, more dramatic parts, but also we needed her to be a believable stand up and deliver a joke. And there's not a ton of women that are that age that we thought would be perfect for it. And so we sent it to her, and she met with us and said, I always wanted to be a stand up. When I was 12, everyone was a mermaid or a princess, and I dressed as Phyllis Diller, and none of the other kids got it. But she's like, I've always wanted to do that. So it's weirdly Kismet. And then a lot of weird Kismet stuff kept happening.
Like, what else? Tell us. I like weird Kismet shit.
When Jean's husband passed, we sent her flowers, and they were her wedding flowers. And she's like, it's so weird. How would you have known that anemones were my wedding flower? And we had sent her that. And it was just like a weird coincidence. But there kept being these things that she's like, when we would write the script, she'd be like, did you know I was obsessed with Christmas? And we'd be like, no, we don't really know you that well. We're just starting the season. But there was a lot of things that were written into the show that she was like, this is as if you live in my house, or, there was just a bunch of stuff that felt weird, felt weirdly like it was a destined thing. She was meant for it. But
yeah, your character is so fucking funny. You and Megan. Oh my God. Megan is so ridiculous. I mean, does she ever say anything serious? I'm like, every time I see her, I'm like, are you in character? Or are you, I'm like, is this your real person?
She's always on. She's always on. But I have gotten some serious moments from her. And actually, you'll see it this season. She plays some serious moments in the show.
Ooh, I don't know if I'm ready for that.
I got to tell you what, she was making me cry in the scene. It's season 3. It's the finale of season 3. She was so good. I was moved during it. It was crazy. She's great.
Yeah, that's okay. That's enough about that. Now, how do you know when you are writing something and you're starring in it? I always am curious about directing and starring in your own stuff. How do you know when it's actually serving the purpose, like serving the script versus just serving your own role and and the expansion of it? Yes.
Yeah. I think because being a writer on the show, like writing the show, I think I care so much more about the story than my part in the show that oftentimes I'm like, we can lose that scene of Jimmy. I honestly often am like the one who's like, just cut that. And luckily I have these other people who are like, no, keep it in. That was a funny scene. We got to keep it in. But when I'm directing, I mostly direct episodes that Jimmy isn't really in because I find that hard too. I'm like, I don't know how you do a whole movie where you're the lead of the movie and directing the movie. I'm like, what do you watch playback every 5 minutes? And it seems, or you're in a scene, you're like, can we just, what I need you to do, you're directing your scene partner.
But you're writing, directing, and starring in this. That's a lot. I didn't realize you were also directing.
Yeah, I direct only a handful of the episodes. Lucia directs.
All right, we get it. You're a director. You don't have to get defensive.
And a showrunner.
No, I'm saying I don't direct that many. I dabble. But we have fun.
And how does that work? I want to know about like being with your spouse, working together, living together. How does that vibe work? You have a kid now, so
we do.
And obviously you have to have help because if you're both working.
We do.
Whenever I think of a couple working together, I envision Dr. Phil with his wife in the audience and think, don't you have anything to do? Like, why is she sitting there listening to her fucking husband? Like, that's an hour she could get away from him, and she chooses to go and listen to him rant and rave. But I guess I'm going to answer my own question here, but then I want you to elaborate, Paul W., because working together with a spouse in a creative space must be very stimulating. Right? Like more stimulating, like being able to carry your work home with you when it is creative isn't as onerous as it is to carry your work home with you if you're a CPA or something.
Exactly. We are, in a way, we're always working, but we're never working because even when we're together and we're at a restaurant and we see a waitress who's like doing something fun, we're like, this is a scene. You know what I mean? We're constantly collecting material, but also we're never really bored because we always have something. And the thing is because we also work on comedy together, it's about trying to make the other person laugh. So again, it's not like being a CPA or even doing something dramatic. I'm like, we're not bringing home some true crime murder story, and thinking about the directing of that. We're We're thinking about a better joke.
Or directing the Ashley Madison documentary. Is that what you were thinking of saying?
Exactly. Yeah, we're not doing that. We're not.
Such a beautiful documentary. And what about like, because it's very heartwarming, the show. And so I'm always wondering like the line, because I would always err on the side of hard comedy. And this is, I wouldn't say hard comedy, right? I wouldn't say that. I would say that it's comedy, but there's a lot of heart. I guess from Gene, sometimes it can be hard comedy. How do you toe the line? Like, what's the most important for you and your storytelling vision? And what's most important for the show?
Funny first. I mean, it is in our minds a comedy. And so we're always making sure that it's funny first. Like, but whether that just be the scene or the dialogue. And we do have this kind of cheat code because Jean plays a stand-up. So we get to like write not only stand-up jokes for her, but also like, she's a person that makes jokes constantly. She's constantly joking. She's constantly ribbing Ava, and Ava's throwing it back. Like, we get to write jokes, which I think when you see a comedy where people, whatever, work in a hospital and then they're slinging jokes, you're like, well, it feels written because
right.
Hey, there's plenty of people that are not professional comedians who are really funny. I'm not saying that.
You've never met a funny phlebotomist?
I haven't. I don't think I've met a phlebotomist.
It only took me 2 tries to get phlebotomist out of my mouth.
That was good. And that's a funny word.
I'm assuming that you've had therapy in your life, right? You've been to therapy.
I have indeed.
You have?
I have, yeah.
It's impossible to live in LA and be in this industry and not go to therapy. It's like the gateway drug to therapy is being in Hollywood. You have to go to therapy at some point if you've lived there. Okay, well,
absolutely.
We're going to take a break and then we're going to come back and we're going to answer some callers' questions. Okay, Paul W? Okay, we'll be right back.
This week, we'd love to get questions from anyone with parenting questions or step-parenting questions. We'd also like to hear from any trans or non-binary folks who would like advice from Chelsea, whether that be about friendships, dating, work issues, or anything else. Write into dearchelseapodcast@gmail.com.
And we're back with Paul W. Downs.
Hello again.
And has no relation to the zillions of Paul Downs out there, right? Because I'm assuming that W had to be put in there.
Yeah, well, I do have, I have a relationship to my dad, but if I didn't have the W, he might collect a residual, which is not good. It's got to go to me.
Are you in any way related to George W. Bush?
No, it's not the W. It's not the W.
Okay.
The W is, keyword for me, but yeah, no.
Oh, I was just asking. No. I ask every guest.
Yes. Our first question comes from Elle. She says, Dear Chelsea, I'm writing to ask you about how to approach a prenup. My fiance is a self-made millionaire and has 2 kids. I've always known that there will be a prenup eventually, but I feel like the expectations are always changing. None of this is very romantic, and I hate going through this process. I don't want the money he made before we were together, but having said that, I want to stand up for myself.
I want more money.
I have no kids, I'm almost a decade younger, and I've had a successful career. But it feels like since we're starting a partnership, I should have a somewhat equal share in what happens going forward. How do you recommend handling money matters like this in a couple? Elle.
Oh, God. Prenups
Tricky.
that is, I don't know the legalities around a prenup because I'm smart enough to never have been married. Paul W., what about you? You're married.
I am married. I don't have a prenup.
Okay, well, you need to get one, even though you guys share the same job.
We got to do, I know, that's the thing. I'm like,
that's going to be tricky. No,
there's no,
you can get a post-nup, actually. That is a thing. People do that. Or they renegotiate their prenup once they're down the road, like 5 or 10 years. Like, who's counting? Obviously, they are, because they're like, all right, now it's time for this to, mature. But I would say, first of all, you need an attorney that is going to have your best interests in mind. You can't rely on your fiance's attorney to have your best interests. That is not a thing. They don't have your best interests. They have his best interests. So you have to just find a lawyer, and find a female lawyer, I would say, to help negotiate your terms. And you're absolutely right. If you're going to move in and be a partnership, then it should be more of a partnership. But yeah, you're no way entitled to anything that he made before that, or any of the money that is set aside for his children.
I think that's right. I think it's like, okay, we just make terms that you guys are a partnership from that point forward. I think that's right.
I was once engaged very quietly to someone, and as soon as I heard about the prenup, I was like, we're not doing this. It was from my business managers. Once I heard about what would be what it would entail, I was like, never mind. I'm not even going to have the problem to ever have to deal with.
I will say our business manager did recommend a prenup, and we did not do it.
Yeah. There are those people. You must have thought you were really in love at that time, Paul W.
Well, we had been together for like 15 years.
That's a long time. 15 years. So now you've been together 20 years? No, 18 years.
No, like 17.
17. Yeah, 17. Okay. My math is sometimes a little bit off.
Mine is off too. I'm like, this is kind of an approximation,
Yeah,
There was
of
gray
course.
area anyway,
Well, lengths of time, durations of time is always an approximation. People are like, when did your mother die? I'm like, I don't know. It could have been a year ago. It could have been 10 years ago. I have no sense of like time.
Right,
No.
right.
Especially these
I have
days.
very bad memory too.
Oh, you have a really bad memory. A lot of guys have bad memories. It's impressive when you meet a guy with good memory. I sometimes have a good one, sometimes a bad one. It depends how much pot I smoked that day. But
Yep.
I think that's really good advice for Elle. Like, get your own attorney because it's not a romantic thing and it needs to just like not be romantic.
Yeah, and you shouldn't even discuss it with your husband.
Exactly.
Just don't even discuss it. Let that lawyers deal with it. People are there to do those jobs so you don't have to do them. Do not get involved. It will get much more unromantic if you do.
Exactly.
I agree.
Yeah.
Keep the boundary.
Yeah.
Don't talk about
Money's always an
Yeah.
ugly conversation. It's an uncomfortable
It's tricky.
conversation. If you need it, it's a desperate conversation. If you have it, it's just always like it's sticky.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So there you go, Elle. Our first caller today is Bree. She is 37 and she's a therapist. Dear Chelsea, I'm a lesbian in my mid-30s who's worked for the last 10 years as both a child behavioral therapist and a family therapist. It can be a very difficult and very rewarding job, and I love it. At home, I have a wife who I've been with since our early 20s. We have a beautiful 4-year-old daughter and are on the verge of trying for another child. We have a wonderful marriage. She's my best friend, my ride or die, and 90% of the time, things are great. Parenting is where it gets tricky. She's the one who carried our daughter and has always been a mama bear by nature. While I'm also a mom, I often take the quote dad roles when parenting. Our daughter has a special bond with my wife, which is great, but sometimes it leaves me feeling a little left out. And as much as I love my job, it feels like it's working against me sometimes at home. While my wife and I often parent cohesively, we'll occasionally disagree with some parenting decisions. Unfortunately, whenever I disagree with her opinion, she automatically says that I'm being too clinical. I try not to use professional language for this reason, and I do think I do a pretty good job. Needless to say, anytime we have a parenting disagreement, her opinion always wins, and she disqualifies mine due to my profession. My wife struggles with a lot of insecurity, and I can see some of the same traits developing in our daughter. I've tried to explain that there are things we can do as parents to build our daughter's self-confidence, but my words fall on deaf ears and she does get defensive. I've suggested seeing a family therapist ourselves, but she revealed to me that she doesn't believe in therapy, which is a whole other dilemma.
Oh, no!
Is it better for me to back down and go along with her instincts as a mom, sometimes against my better judgment and training? Am I really letting my career blur my natural parenting? Bree.
Oh, hi, Bree.
Hi.
Hi. This is our special guest today, Paul W. Downs.
Hi.
Hi.
It's not funny, but it's very funny that that's like being a Ghostbuster and having your spouse not believe in ghosts. That's fucked up.
Yeah, it's been challenging.
People cannot not be open to therapy. Like, that's just so stupid to say. You need a parenting counselor, somebody who can talk to both of you, because it's not cool that she's disagreeing with you. You guys are supposed to be on the same team.
Yeah. And I think a lot of it had to do with the fact that when our daughter was first born, I'm not great with newborns. Did not come naturally to me. I was awkward. I fumbled around a lot. And I think she sort of panicked and pulled back. And, my expertise is really from 5 and above. And so I think she was like, you know what, we're done. I'm going to make the decisions and you can be over here.
Okay, well, that you can't be relegated to like a second in command. I wouldn't worry about that. People bond with children at different ages. Like, don't worry about not bonding to the same level when she was an infant. Is your daughter?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
A daughter was an infant.
Daughter.
So don't worry about that. You're going to have your own bonding with her at whatever age it's going to happen. That always shakes itself out. But your wife seems to be the bigger issue, which is you have to get her to understand that she doesn't get to decide. She's not the only parent in this unit. This family unit has 2 parents and she's dominating.
Yeah. And she's never dominated in anything before. I've always been that kind of person too. She's always been like, oh, I'm good with whatever. I make all the decisions for a lot of things, which can be frustrating because I love a back and forth. And so now she's like, you know what? I've never done anything and made any decisions. Now I'm going to stand up for myself and make all these decisions. And, it's hard to argue with that. But I'd like to be a role in my daughter's life.
And you have every right to be a role in your daughter's life. So that's the most important thing. It's not about who's right or who's wrong. It's about both being open to listening to each other's opinions.
You do family therapy, right?
Yeah, I'm a family therapist and a child behavioral therapist. Yeah.
Okay. So what would you say to you. I'm like, this is so hard because you're in it, but
Yeah.
this is fascinating. This is hard.
I mean, the immediate thought that would come to mind for me is there's clearly some trust issues on her end in terms, she did have a very traumatic childhood. There is a lot of trust background issues there. She doesn't believe in therapy because she doesn't trust the process. She doesn't trust that someone, a stranger, could help her with what she experienced. And she doesn't trust other people to help make big decisions like myself for our daughter. And at first, before we had a child, it was easier because it was just the two of us. And now there's a whole human life here that is impacting our ability to trust each other, basically. So that would be my first thought, is there's some trust building to have to occur here, but I don't know how to do it.
Well, especially with what you just said earlier, which is that you made all the decisions until this, and you're a child psychologist or a behavioralist. And so she's looking at you like, oh, no, this is another thing you're going to dominate. And now she's stepping in and going, no, I'm going to take this role. So with that information, with everything you said, that sounds pretty kind of textbook. So you should be able to handle this without us.
And how old is she? Your daughter, not your wife.
She's 4.5 now.
4.5. Okay.
Yeah.
You're about to get to your expertise.
Yes. And, I'd love another child, but I don't want to go through all this over again.
Okay, well, you have to get into therapy together. She can't, that attitude isn't going to be good for your marriage or your relationship or your family dynamic. So you've got to really work on that and work on that. Do you see someone?
Yes, I do.
Well, talk to your person about that. I mean, I know you're trying to talk to us about it, but you should also talk to your person and see what they say. Like, what is an organic way for you to bring her in where she doesn't feel threatened and she doesn't feel it's about her, and you can organically bring the conversation in around whatever the pretense of her coming to therapy, which is you want to make sure that you're staying connected. Maybe you don't feel so connected to her.
Yeah, that's true.
You know, and I don't think you go in saying like staking your claim of what you think you're missing. I think you go in like, I want us to be more unified as parents, and I want to be closer to you, and acknowledge the closeness she has with your daughter without sounding like it's a threat. You know what I mean? Like, it's so great the way that you've stepped in. It makes my life, it's so nice to know she's in such safe hands, that obviously it's her mother, but still, like, people need to hear those things, and that's usually where the insecurity lies. It's like this deep-rooted fear that you're not doing a good enough job at whatever it is you're doing.
Right.
I think you've hit the nail on the head there with her. I think that you're absolutely right. She would respond much better to a positive approach there, instead of, in the past, we would just combat. I would say, why am I not allowed in on this? And she would get defensive. So I think that's absolutely right.
Yeah. With people who get defensive, it's just like you have to like pour love over them over and over and over again until they just melt and give up.
Yeah. It's almost like you want to say, can you come to my session? Because I want you to help me with this thing that I'm dealing with.
Exactly.
I'm feeling sad about this thing. And maybe you can shed some light on the situation with my therapist. Like, if you make it more about what you need and not what they need to change, that might be helpful. And I think that's right. It's just about like being like, you're so great at all these things. Sometimes I don't feel I do feel like sometimes people do the counterbalance. They do the yin to the yang. And it's like, it might be the case that she's like, no, you're great. You're a great parent. You also studied this. You went to school for it. And, maybe I do believe in it.
Absolutely.
But you could still feel inadequate within a relationship. And that's a good descriptor to use for the way you feel to her, because that makes it, it's not aggressive.
Yeah. And I think there was also that second layer for me of I'm not a blood parent. And so I was already feeling insignificant, that I didn't have the same role in my daughter's life with that whole second parent, but not blood parent situation. So that really haunted me for a while as well. I'm working on that.
When you, you said that you're thinking about another child, is she going to carry again and use her own eggs and everything?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
So same situations, full blood sibling.
But you're having honest feelings about that. Reservations, right?
Yeah.
You said?
Yeah.
Yeah. So you got to like get this. It's going to be fine. You just have to get her to a place where you have to really come from a place where you're sharing it with her rather than prescribing it to her.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm just navigating both her and being, a same-sex couple with same-sex parenting, which we don't have a lot of examples to pull from. So we're sort of making it up on the fly.
Just follow Brandi Carlisle on Instagram. She and her wife seem to make it work. Even though Brandi Carlisle is on, can you join a band and go on tour? That seems to be a great elixir.
Yeah, to get out of the house.
Can you start doing stand-up?
Oh,
that's your answer.
No talent there either.
Oh, most people don't. No. Okay. Well, good luck with everything, and keep us posted. Let us know if that works out and you get her to come to therapy.
Awesome. Maybe I'll get her to come here and get therapy from you.
Yeah, tell her to call Dear Chelsea.
Bring her on.
Yeah,
that's fun. That's good.
We are looking for couples. I'm not fucking joking.
I know.
I like talking to couples. So if you could get her to do it, we'll set it up.
All right. Thank you guys so much.
Thanks, Bree.
Bye, Bree.
Paul, do you defer to your wife about your child, about your parenting? Or does she defer to you? Who's in charge? I feel like she is.
I think it depends. It depends on the moment. I feel like we both have our thoughts. I mean, sometimes it differs, but it's so minor. It's usually around should we keep him up in the car before nap time? You know what I mean? It's stuff like that. But I get what Bree was saying about, even because I feel like dads feel this way too, even if they are blood related. It's well, they didn't carry the child. They also didn't. If the child was breastfed, they didn't breastfeed, and there's a bond that happens there. And in the beginning, the dad is kind of like the butler. Not, he's just making sure everybody has the things, but not really doing as much. So I do get that. I get what Bree's talking about.
Yeah, I would definitely even hearing it, there's one birth parent and then there's one. So you're assuming a male role almost because you're the dad, or a traditional male role. But
right.
I would feel that if I was in a lesbian relationship and my wife carried the baby, I'd be like, all right, what am I, odd man out? It's like how you feel after a threesome, when you're the extra.
Just like that. It's not how Paul W. feels every day in his workplace.
Paul W. always feels post threesome. I can tell.
That's right.
Oh, by the way, Paul, I just agreed to do a residency in Vegas at the Cosmopolitan once a month.
I know. Congrats. I love that.
I was inspired by the show.
No, get out of here. Get out of here.
But I read that you guys spend so much time in Vegas, so you actually have to live there part-time when you're shooting, right?
We actually, I hate to say it, we shoot mostly in LA. We're only there for 3 days a season.
Oh, okay. That makes sense.
We do love the Vegas portion of our shoot.
Yeah.
We love going there, and it is the show. So I love Vegas. I think it's.
I love the way her house is in Vegas with that long drive. I love when a driveway is too long to be called a driveway, and it's just a drive. It's a drive. That's what I say whenever I go to Ted Sarandis' house. It's it's a drive. It's a whole.
Yeah.
It loops around the property, and you're like, ooh, am I at Neverland?
I want to go. Everybody I know is going. I gotta go. Yeah, I gotta go to Ted.
They're the best hosts. Okay, so I love the way her comes into her house. I'm like, oh God, that's the only way you could get anyone to move to Vegas is to give them some sprawling indoor amusement park for a house. Basically,
right.
You have all the fixings you need here. You don't ever have to leave because it's fucking hot there.
Are you going to live there?
No.
You're just going to now.
I literally go. I fly. I perform once a month, so it's
Oh,
it's
great.
not
Easy.
a weekly thing.
Right.
I tried to calculate in my head how many hours in a row I could stay in Vegas while also remaining stable. You know what I mean? I can't be trusted in areas like that or Monte Carlo.
Oh wow! Monte Carlo would be really fun. I would see you there.
I've been dying to throw Monte Carlo into something.
I love that.
What do we have? What's next?
Well, now that we've hit Monte Carlo, our next caller is Kelly. Kelly is 29 and says, Dear Chelsea, I write to you because I need you to help me get the hell over a fear. My partner is a world traveler. It's one of her favorite things. She would love nothing more than to go somewhere extra cool with me. I also love to travel and take vacations, but usually ones I can drive to. You see, I'm afraid of planes. She and I have been together for 4 years now. She's been patient and supportive, but it has been 4 years, and I owe it to her and me to shake it off. I refuse to fly for about 20 years now. I think my avoidance is rooted in past experience of turbulence, fear of no exit or control, a fatal plane crash occurring in a city my partner was visiting at the time, intrusive thoughts, and overall anxiety. My therapist is on board to help me through the plane fear, even via virtual reality. My doctor has given me Ativan to use on my first ever adult flight, whenever that may be. In conclusion, I'm getting good building blocks toward my first flight, but the thought still horrifies me. I need Chelsea Handler to tell me to get the hell over it, maybe. Tell me, what's so good about flying? Your advice will help my partner like me even more. Kelly. And Kelly, I do need you to tell us what you told me on our call together about like the last time you flew and when that was.
Yes. Hello, everyone.
Hi.
Welcome.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me. So my last flight was in 2005. I was very young, and Hurricane Katrina was basically hitting as we were leaving. The hurricane was hitting and hitting turbulence in the air. Just all of that combined really freaked me out.
Yeah, but you're fine. You're fine now. Nothing happened. So look, the worst thing happened and you're fine.
Yeah.
I mean, the worst thing didn't happen, but it came close to happening, or what you think was going to cause that. First of all, I don't know if this will help you, but it helped me a long time ago. I don't have a fear of flying, but I remember someone telling me that when you're experiencing turbulence, it's almost like the opposite of crashing. Like, it is the most normal, expected thing to happen, and that planes don't get into trouble during turbulence. That's not what causes planes to go, you know? I mean, maybe with weather changing the way it is because of climate change, that it could escalate to that, but that's not where crashes come from, turbulence. So you should know that and write that down in front of you so you can read that over and over again. You know what I mean? For when you fly, I'm fucking serious.
What, but just you were fine?
You are fine. You are safe. You are fine. I am safe, blah, 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 over and over and over again to yourself. To calm yourself down while you're on the plane. And Ativan didn't help you?
I haven't tried it yet.
Oh, it's going to be great. You're going to
love it. The other thing is, I would recommend you go to a hypnotist to try to get over this, because Kerry Gaynor's in LA, but that would require a flight. So I don't know. I went to him for smoking cigarettes. I have tons of people. Do you know who he is?
I've heard of him, yes.
Yeah, like he's this famous hypnotist who is...
I had a friend who went for candy, for like a sugar addiction.
I had a friend who went for biting her toenails, okay? Apparently, the two biggest phobias are spiders and flying. Those are fear of public speaking and flying. Spiders are scary too.
We feel for the spider fear people.
But can you look up a hypnotist? You have to try it. You do it 3 times and you will, it works for a lot of people. So don't rule that out.
And you know, my uncle flies planes and I'm like, this is crazy. This is scary. But you know what he said to me? And it actually is in my head all the time. Planes want to stay in the air. The way that they're designed, it's hard to get them down. Actually, the landing is, not to scare you, one of the most treacherous parts.
Okay, well,
because
that wasn't necessary to say.
Okay, that wasn't
Paul
helpful.
W, what are you doing right now? So she gets on the plane. She's so okay. And then she remembers what you said about the fucking landing.
That's the last 5 minutes.
But then it's all.
That's when you're there.
Then you've ruined the whole flight.
No,
you've ruined my next flight too.
It's not dangerous to land. It's fine. It's all safe. It's safer than driving in a car. You know that. You've heard the stats.
It is safer than driving in a car.
Have you been in a golf cart?
Yeah.
So golf carts don't really have a suspension that lets them, I mean, they're really bouncy, but they don't tip over. They don't roll. You know what I mean? That's exactly what turbulence is. It's like bounces. It's not going to make the plane fall out of the air. It's like being in a golf cart. And I know that sounds crazy, but I do think, because turbulence, I don't love it either. I don't know who loves turbulence, but I do think about the golf cart analogy whenever there's turbulence, and also that the plane wants to be in the air.
I don't think that line of thinking is helpful at all. Does that make you feel better?
Yes, I wrote all those down.
Great.
It's also like an overstimulation thing and not liking to be around people and have no escape. So I'm wondering if I should save up for like a first class flight. That might
that will help a lot.
That will help. Ativan in first class will really help. Also, I think turbulence is less apparent in the front, I think.
Yeah.
Is that true?
I took Ativan for flying because I was like a period where I was pretty nervous flyer, and it you still think like, oh, I might die, but it makes you not care that you might die. It just takes that away. I will also say TikTok. There are a lot of people on there who are like, let me walk you through the different sounds you're going to hear as you're taking off or as you're landing, and here's why they're not scary. I recently stumbled across this, and it made my next flight so much easier.
Have to download TikTok.
Yes.
Well, let's not get ahead of ourselves.
Maybe just
if you
Google
don't have
them.
TikTok yet, don't ruin it. Probably stay away from it and just look up what she's talking about.
Yeah.
Don't download
I'm sure
TikTok.
they're on YouTube too.
But does any of that help you?
Definitely. I'm just really grateful.
You can do it.
Thank you.
Can do it.
Si se puede.
It's going to be so worth it. You're going to love it.
Yeah, I just want to pick a place I really want to go to and that it'll feel really worth it. And hearing your words of encouragement is super helpful.
Yeah, get
So
after it, because once you get
Totally.
that first flight down, then you can travel wherever you want, girl. And that's the key to the rest of your life, like looking and seeing different new places. I mean, how exciting is that to know that you can go and travel around the world and you're not going to be scared?
Yep.
If Courtney can get Travis Barker to fly again, you can fly again.
I think Courtney could get Travis Barker to do a lot of things that he hasn't done in a long time. He seems pretty devoted to her.
I think that's true.
Okay, well, good luck with everything. Take care.
Thank you so much.
Okay.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye.
I don't like these requests when people say, I want Chelsea to tell me to get my shit together. I want Chelsea to tell me to go for a flight. Because it's like, that's all I have to say then. Like, they're not letting me decide what to say. Then I'm just like, go, do it.
I think we gave her a lot of stuff, though. I think it was good.
Well, we did cover a lot of stuff. Thank God Paul was here.
People just don't have, like, Chelsea Handler confidence, so they're like, give that to me, you know?
It's not confidence. It's that I don't care. You know what I mean? Long enough to make a choice. I'm just like, let's go. Keep moving. We're going to take a quick break. Paul, put your coffee down. What? You're on camera.
Thought it was a break.
We're going to take a break, and Paul, W, and I are we're going to be back. We're back.
All right. Our last email comes from Kim. She says, Dear Chelsea, I recently went through my first adult breakup. My wife and I were together for 12 years, married for 7, and it has been the most difficult thing I've ever had to grow through. I live a double life, split between corporate America and being a comedian. I've been in a love-hate relationship with stand-up since 2006, and right before the pandemic, I co-wrote a web series that we finally put in the festival circuit. I'm considering getting back on stage, and of course, all my stand-up friends are like, you have so much material. Let's just say that the way my marriage ended is very complicated and involves a hypnotist, a magician, a clown, and possibly a cult.
Can we get that hypnotist number for the other caller?
Let's hope so. Yeah. I don't know if I have a Lifetime original movie on my hands or comedy gold, but it's something. That's the background, and here's the dilemma. My ex asked me to keep some information about our breakup on the DL because it could affect her career. Although I can easily tell jokes and not say her name directly, things do tend to end up on the internet, and people that know us will very quickly put 2 and 2 together. I'm also not sure what protections I have if I decided to write a script or something that's, quote, based on true events. I'm torn between feeling the need to protect someone that honestly really hurt me and wanting to dive back into my comedy world and tell my story. Kim.
I don't know what the legalities around that are, because I know about writing a book, how you have to change things for people so that no one can recognize who you're talking about. But you can still talk about the people, things that experiences you've had. You just have to shroud who that other person is. And I don't know if just being in front of people who know that you dated her is enough of a connection. Like, that's still your experience. Right. You're not calling her out. You've had other girlfriends, I'm sure. Well, maybe it's been a long time, it sounded like, so maybe not. But I think you can talk about her without. Don't say her name. Don't do that. If somebody asks for privacy, everyone has a right to privacy, even though I don't respect that, you know. But I think you should definitely pursue stand-up and see what you've got in this material, because nothing is funny like tragedy. Really nothing. You give anything 2 weeks and it is cooked perfectly to bring it out and start sharing it. So I am a firm believer in the darker the moment, the funnier, the potential for funny is greater.
100%. I think that the saddest stuff can be the funniest. And also, if you have material that, I mean, it sounds pretty rich. That material sounds good. I feels like you have to do it, especially if the person hurt you. I get it. We don't want to expose the person. That person has a right to privacy. But I don't know, unless you have an hour of material about this woman who then, you know, you tape a special and it becomes huge. I don't think it's going to impact her career. You know, people you guys have in common might be like, oh, they had a clown?
Yeah, exactly. By the time you would get a comedy special, you're going to have had more girlfriends, so there's no direct relationship. I understand you've been with someone for 12 years, so when you say your ex, everyone knows who knows you knows who you're talking about. But not everybody knows who you're talking about. So it is kind of a murky area. But comics do it all the time. My whole first set was about my ex-boyfriend finding him cheating on me with not 1 but 2 women. I added the second one for storytelling purposes. There was really only 1 woman. But like, I talked about him for like, that was my first set, was just how walking in on my boyfriend cheating on me. So you can, I mean, people, that's what everyone is doing. Taylor Swift just wrote a song about Kim Kardashian and called it Thank You, Amy. And it's about Kim. We all know it's about Kim Kardashian. So, you know, I would just say keep it You've never said her name out loud. Don't say it so you don't get yourself in trouble. But definitely pursue stand up. And if if you're feeling it and it's vibing, then continue. Conversely, if the opposite is true as well, don't continue. Okay, well, we're going to wrap up with you. You're such a cutie pie, Paul W. Downs. I had such a fun time with you today.
It is an honor and a pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Okay, well, I wish you well. Say hi to my friends, Hannah and Jen Statsky. Tell her I say hello too from childhood.
I will indeed. Yeah. And then I'm going to tell Jean to come on.
Oh, yeah. Tell Jean I want her on too. Yes, absolutely. You have to write a part for me to come on so I can either have a love scene with. No, I can't have a love scene. I can't even have a love scene with a man. I once had to do a movie and this is how bad you guys I was. I once had to do a movie with this actor and they wanted me to open mouth kiss him. And I took one look at this guy and I was like, I can't do that. I can't kiss this man. I just won't. And so I went to the director and I was like, I know this scene is about us like making out, but obviously like, let's fake that because I'm not interested in this. And he's like, well, it's in the script. Like,
you have to act.
And I was like, no, it's not happening. Like, I'm not making out with that kid. He was like 10 years younger than me. It felt disgusting. And there was a situation and I was like, no. And then finally I was like, I don't know what to tell you to the director. I go, I don't know what to tell you. It's not going to happen. So finally he's like, okay, well, what can happen? I was like, we could touch arms and then we're going to turn our back to the camera. No, you don't want to hire me for anything. I'm terrible.
Well, okay. I'll keep that in mind.
Okay, keep that in mind. Keep my behavior
we'd love to have you.
in mind. I would love to. Thank you so much, Paul W. We love you.
Thank you for having me. I love you guys.
Everyone tune in to season 3 of Hacks if you haven't seen it already. It's streaming on Max.